When Ricardo Montenegro died on his operating table, he never expected to meet Prophet Muhammad himself, who revealed a shocking truth about Islam that would change everything. What he learned in those 15 minutes of clinical death shook him to his core. Living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, wasn't what I had planned for my retirement. At 58, I had spent most of my career as a mechanical engineer, working on oil rigs across Texas. My wife Diana and I moved here 3 years ago when she got promoted to chief surgeon at St. Francis Hospital. That morning started like any other. I was fixing our broken pool filter. The darn thing had been giving us trouble all summer. The poolside tiles were slippery from the recent rain, but I figured I could handle it. I'd been doing maintenance work all my life, after all. The filter housing was stuck tight. I grabbed my wrench and put my whole weight into turning it. That's when everything went wrong. My foot slipped on the wet tile, and I went down hard. The wrench handle caught me right in the chest as I fell, and I heard something crack. The pain was immediate and intense. But that wasn't the worst part. As I fell, my head whacked against the concrete edge of the pool. I remember feeling warm blood trickling down my neck, and my vision started getting spotty. I tried calling for help, but no sound came out. Diana was at work, and our nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile away. I lay there, struggling to breathe, each intake of air feeling like knives in my chest. The morning sun was bright, too bright. Everything started spinning, and I felt myself fading. My last coherent thought was of Diana and how she'd find me here when she got home. Then everything went black. Later, I learned that I had a punctured lung from the broken rib and severe head trauma from the impact. The pool maintenance guy found me about an hour later when he came for his weekly service. I had lost a lot of blood, and my heart had stopped twice in the ambulance. What happened next would change my understanding of everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what comes after. I was clinically dead for 15 minutes during emergency surgery. In those 15 minutes, I experienced something that would shake the foundations of my beliefs and reveal truths about Islam that I never expected to learn. The first thing I remember after blacking out was the sensation of floating. Not like in water, but like being weightless in space. The pain was gone, both from my chest and my head. I felt lighter than air, peaceful even. Then I saw it, the famous tunnel everyone talks about in near-death experiences. But this wasn't just any tunnel. It was made of pure light, shifting and swirling with colors I had never seen before and can't even describe with our human language. It wasn't just visual. I could feel the light, hear it even. It was like being inside a living symphony of color and sound. As I moved through the tunnel, I became aware that I was no longer in my physical body. I could see myself traveling through this magnificent corridor of light, but it wasn't the 58-year-old body I'd grown used to. I was energy, pure consciousness, yet I still maintained my sense of self, my memories, my personality, everything that made me who I was. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, yet I covered vast distances in what felt like seconds. Time didn't work the same way here. I could feel myself being drawn forward by some invisible force, gentle but persistent, like a river current guiding me along. As I traveled, I began seeing flashes of my life. Not the typical life review people talk about, but specific moments. Times when I had questioned the meaning of life, moments when I had pondered about God and religion. I saw myself as a teenager, asking my Sunday school teacher about other faiths. I saw myself in college, attending a comparative religion class out of curiosity. I saw myself nodding politely when my Muslim coworker tried to tell me about Islam. These memories felt significant somehow, as if they were being shown to me for a reason. Each one was crystal clear, more vivid than when I had actually lived through them. I could feel the emotions associated with each moment, as if they were happening right now. Then, suddenly, the tunnel opened up into a vast expanse of light. The brightness should have been blinding, but it wasn't. If anything, it felt like my eyes, or whatever I was seeing with, were finally working properly for the first time in my life. In this space, I felt a presence. No, multiple presences. They were all around me, but I couldn't see them yet. The air, if you could call it that, was charged with anticipation. Something important was about to happen. Something that would change everything I thought I knew about faith, religion, and the afterlife. I heard voices speaking in languages I didn't understand, yet somehow I comprehended their meaning. They were discussing me, discussing my life, discussing my beliefs. And then, through the brilliant light, I saw a figure approaching. As it drew closer, I realized with astonishment who it was, the last person I would have expected to meet in this place. The figure that emerged from the light was dressed in traditional Arab clothing from the 7th century. His face was weathered but had a certain charisma that I instantly recognized from historical descriptions. It was Muhammad, the prophet of Islam. But something was off. His eyes held a deep sadness, and his shoulders were hunched as if carrying a heavy burden. "Ricardo," he said, speaking in perfect English, though his lips weren't moving. The communication was direct, mind to mind. "I have been waiting for this moment. There are truths you must know, truths I must share about the religion that bears my name." I was stunned. Of all the beings I expected to meet in this place, Muhammad wasn't one of them. I had always assumed if I had a near-death experience, I'd meet Jesus or maybe some angels. But here was the prophet of Islam, looking nothing like the confident leader depicted in Islamic teachings. "You're surprised to see me here," he continued, reading my thoughts. "Even more surprised that I'm speaking to you about the falsehood of Islam. But that is exactly why I've come. I must tell you about the greatest deception in human history." The space around us shifted, and suddenly we were surrounded by scenes from 7th century Arabia. I watched as Muhammad paced in his cave near Mecca. But instead of the divine revelation Muslims believe in, I saw something disturbing. The prophet showed me how he had crafted the Quran using bits and pieces of Jewish and Christian teachings he had learned from traders, mixed with his own ideas and political ambitions. "I was wrong," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "What began as a way to unite the Arab tribes and bring some order to a chaotic society became something much darker. I never intended for my teachings to be turned into a religion that would lead billions astray." He showed me scenes of early Islamic conquests, the violence, the forced conversions, the destruction of ancient Christian communities. "This was never about divine truth," he explained. "It was about power, about control. The real truth was always in the original message of Jesus Christ." I watched in horror as he revealed how simple desert laws were transformed into supposedly divine commandments, how political conveniences were dressed up as religious requirements, how stories were fabricated to support his authority. "But what about all the Muslims today?" I asked, thinking of my former coworker who had always seemed so sincere in his faith. "They are sincere," Muhammad replied, "but sincerely deceived, just as I was deceived by my own ambitions. The truth is, there is only one way to salvation, and it's not through Islam. The real truth has always been in the message of Jesus Christ, not as we portrayed him in the Quran, but as he truly is, God incarnate." Muhammad led me through what looked like a vast library in the spiritual realm. The walls were lined with golden scrolls, each one containing what he called true records of history. "Let me show you how it really happened," he said, pulling out one of the scrolls. As it unfurled, the scenes played out around us like a divine hologram. "Watch carefully." I saw young Muhammad, ambitious and troubled, meeting with various scribes and religious scholars in secret. They were carefully constructing the verses of the Quran, debating which stories would appeal most to the Arab tribes, which laws would be most effective in maintaining control. "I began to believe my own deception," Muhammad explained. "The power, the followers, the conquest, it was intoxicating. But here, in death, all delusions fall away. We see the truth in its pure form." He showed me scenes that contradicted everything Muslims believe about the Quran's preservation. I saw verses being changed, removed, added years after his death. I watched as later caliphs shaped the religion to serve their political needs. "The worst part," he continued, his voice filled with remorse, "is that I knew about Jesus. I knew he was more than just a prophet. The Christian traders I met in my youth told me about his divinity, his sacrifice, his resurrection. But acknowledging that would have meant giving up my own position of authority." We moved through more scenes, the early Muslim conquests of Christian lands, the destruction of churches, the forced conversions. "Look at what my followers did to the people of the true faith," he said, "and it continues to this day." The images shifted to modern times. I saw peaceful Christian communities in the Middle East being persecuted. I saw converts to Christianity from Islam being threatened with death. I saw the spread of radical Islamic ideologies poisoning young minds. Each soul that turns away from Christ because of my teachings adds to my burden, Muhammad said. The real tragedy is that Islam keeps people from accepting the true path to salvation. He turned to me directly, his eyes intense. Do you understand now? Islam isn't just another path to God. It's a barrier. It actively prevents people from finding the real truth. When Muslims pray 5 times a day, they're not praying to the true God. When they fast during Ramadan, they're following man-made rules, not divine commandments. The space around us darkened slightly. But there's more you need to see, he said grimly. The deception goes deeper than you can imagine. Muhammad guided me to another area of this spiritual space. Here, we could see the earth below, like watching from a cosmic observation deck. He waved his hand, and we zoomed in on millions of Muslims performing their daily prayers. Look closer, he instructed. See what's really happening. As I focused, I could see spiritual realities that were invisible to physical eyes. Each time people prostrated toward Mecca, they weren't connecting with heaven as they believed. Instead, their sincere devotion was being misdirected. The Kaaba, Muhammad said, showing me the black cube in Mecca, was never a house of God. The black stone was an ancient pagan relic. I kept it to appease the local tribes. Now millions circle it thinking they're performing a holy ritual. He showed me scenes from his life that aren't in any history books. I saw him consulting with power-hungry men, crafting laws that would ensure their control over women in society. I watched as they deliberately mixed truth with falsehood, making the deception more convincing. The real evil, he continued, is how Islam creates a barrier to questioning. Any doubt is considered a sin. Any critical thinking is labeled as blasphemy. I designed it this way to prevent people from discovering the truth. We moved through time, watching as Islamic scholars built elaborate systems of law and theology. Look how they transformed my human words into divine law, Muhammad said. Every hadith, every scholarly interpretation added new layers to the deception. He showed me how Islamic teachings about Jesus were carefully crafted to deny his divinity while still giving him enough honor to seem respectful. We had to acknowledge Jesus because his influence was too great to ignore, Muhammad explained. But we twisted his identity, his message, his sacrifice. We turned the Son of God into just another prophet. The scenes shifted to show modern Islamic preachers. See how they continue the deception, he said. They speak of peace while their teachings divide humanity into believers and infidels. They promise paradise, but lead people away from the only path that leads there. I watched scenes of Islamic paradise being promised to followers, the gardens, the rivers, the rewards. All false, Muhammad said sadly. I created these descriptions to motivate my armies. I took the Christian concept of heaven and materialized it, made it appeal to human desires. The atmosphere changed suddenly. The darkness that had surrounded us while viewing the deceptions lifted, and a warm, pure light began to fill the space. Muhammad's demeanor changed too. He seemed to bow slightly, as if in the presence of something far greater than himself. Now, he said, let me show you what I rejected, what I denied to my followers. Let me show you the truth I've learned since leaving the physical world. The light grew brighter, and in it, I saw scenes of Jesus, not as depicted in Islamic teachings, but as he truly was. I saw his birth, his life, his ministry, but I was seeing it from a spiritual perspective that revealed depths I'd never understood before. Every miracle he performed, Muhammad explained, was not just a display of power, but a sign of his divine nature. When he healed the sick, it wasn't just physical healing, he was showing his authority over creation itself. When he forgave sins, he was demonstrating his divine right to do so. We watched the crucifixion from this spiritual vantage point. I saw things no earthly eye could see, the cosmic significance of what was happening, the way it rippled through all of creation. This is what I denied, Muhammad said. This sacrifice that I dismissed as a mere illusion in the Quran, it was the pivotal moment in all of history. The resurrection played out before us in glorious detail. In Islam, I taught that Jesus didn't die on the cross, that Allah wouldn't allow his prophet to suffer such a death. But look at the truth, the voluntary sacrifice, the victory over death, the proof of his divinity. Then he showed me something that shook me to my core. Scenes of Muslims who had discovered the truth about Jesus. I saw their inner struggles, their fears of rejection and persecution, their eventual joy at finding true freedom in Christ. These are the ones who break free from the deception, Muhammad said. Despite all the barriers I put in place, despite the threats of punishment and death for leaving Islam, they find the truth. Their courage shames me. The light grew even brighter, and I felt an overwhelming presence. Muhammad stepped back, his head bowed. "He's here," he whispered. "The one I denied, the one I relegated to mere prophet status, the one who is, in truth, the Lord of all." The light concentrated into a form of indescribable beauty and power. I couldn't look directly at it, but I knew instantly who it was, Jesus Christ, not as a historical figure or a prophet, but as the divine being he truly is. Muhammad fell to his knees. "Lord," he said, his voice trembling, "I continued to show them the truth as you commanded." The presence of Jesus was overwhelming. Unlike my communication with Muhammad, which had been like a conversation between two people, this was different. Every word carried infinite depths of meaning. Every gesture contained universes of truth. "Ricardo," the voice came not as sound, but as pure understanding inside my being. "You have been shown these things for a purpose. The deceptions that trap millions in false hope must be exposed." I saw then how meticulously the Islamic system had been crafted to block people from recognizing Christ's true nature. Every Islamic teaching about Jesus had been specifically designed to keep people from understanding his divinity while appearing to honor him. "Look," Jesus said, and suddenly I could see the spiritual reality of Muslim prayers. Millions of sincere people praying with all their hearts, but their prayers were hitting a spiritual barrier. "They pray with sincerity," he explained, "but they reject my role as mediator between God and man. They deny my sacrifice, my death, my resurrection. Without accepting these truths, their prayers cannot reach their intended destination." He showed me how the Islamic concept of monotheism, which Muslims believe is purer than Christian theology, actually blinds them to the deeper reality of God's nature. "They think they protect God's unity," Jesus explained, "but they limit their understanding of his infinite being." I saw scenes from history, how Islam had spread, not through divine intervention as Muslims believe, but through military conquest and political power. I saw how it had taken root in places where Christian teachings had been weakened or corrupted, filling the void with a message that seemed simpler but led people astray. "The time is coming," Jesus said, "when many will see through the deception. Many of my Muslim children will find their way home. That is why you are being shown these things." The light shifted, and I saw future scenes. Muslims discovering the truth, leaving Islam despite the dangers, finding true freedom in Christ. But I also saw the persecution they would face, the families they would lose, the threats they would endure. The divine light remained, but now Jesus showed me something even more profound, the spiritual mechanics of how Islam keeps people bound. It was like seeing a complex machine designed to trap souls. "Watch carefully," Jesus instructed, and I saw how the 5 daily prayers, while appearing devotional, actually reinforced false beliefs with each repetition. The Shahada, the Islamic declaration of faith, acted like a spiritual blindfold, making it harder with each recitation for people to see the truth about Christ. Muhammad, still kneeling, spoke up. "I designed the prayers to be frequent and mandatory, knowing that repetition would deepen the deception." Even the physical movements, the bowing and prostrating, were chosen to create a sense of submission to the false system. Jesus then revealed how the Islamic teaching about his crucifixion was a masterpiece of deception. "By denying my death and resurrection," he explained, "Islam removes the very foundation of salvation. It offers a false path of works and rituals instead of true redemption through my sacrifice." I saw the spiritual reality of Ramadan fasting. Millions of people sincerely denying themselves food and water, thinking they were earning divine favor. "They fast from earthly food," Jesus said, "but remain starved of spiritual truth. They seek to earn their salvation, not understanding it is a gift that was purchased with my blood." The scenes shifted to show Islamic teachings about heaven and hell. I saw how the promise of a sensual paradise and the threat of eternal torment were used to keep people trapped in the system. Fear and desire, Muhammad admitted, these were the tools I used to bind souls. Jesus showed me the true nature of Islamic monotheism, how it appeared to exalt God, but actually limited him by denying his ability to enter his creation through the incarnation. They claim to honor God's greatness, he said, while restricting his freedom to act as he chooses. I was shown how Islamic laws and customs, far from bringing people closer to God, actually created barriers between souls and their Creator. The requirement to pray in Arabic, the focus on detailed rituals, the complex legal systems, all serve to keep people busy with forms while missing the substance. The greatest deception, Jesus explained, is that Islam appears to worship the same God while actually leading people away from him. It uses enough truth to seem credible while mixing in lies that lead to spiritual death. The atmosphere grew more intense as Jesus revealed what he called the final deceptions, how Islam would continue to spread in the modern world. I saw how it would use Western concepts of tolerance and inclusivity to present itself as just another path to God. Watch how the deception adapts, Jesus said. I saw Islamic speakers at interfaith gatherings, skillfully presenting their faith as peaceful and compatible with other beliefs. But in the spiritual realm, I could see how these presentations carefully obscured Islam's actual teachings about other religions. Muhammad spoke up again. I crafted the message to have two faces, one for outsiders, another for believers. When Muslims are a minority, they speak of peace and coexistence. But the core teachings remain unchanged. The command to establish Islamic rule, the division of the world into believers and unbelievers. Jesus showed me scenes of Western churches and leaders embracing Islamic teachings out of a misguided desire to show respect. They think they show love, he said, but they actually participate in keeping millions bound in deception. I saw how Islamic teachings about the end times were carefully designed to make Muslims reject the true Christ when he returns. They will be waiting for their Mahdi, Muhammad explained, and will be programmed to reject Jesus as divine. The scenes shifted to show me modern Islamic education. Young children were being taught to memorize the Quran without understanding it, their natural questions about God being suppressed by rote learning and fear of punishment. See how the system perpetuates itself, Jesus said. Critical thinking is discouraged from the earliest age. I witnessed the spiritual reality of what happens during Islamic conversion, how the Shahada acted like a spiritual contract, binding souls to the false system. Each conversion, Muhammad said heavily, adds another link to the chain I forged in life. Jesus then showed me something that brought tears to my eyes. Millions of Muslims praying desperately for truth. They sense something is wrong, he said, but the system gives them no way to express their doubts. Many are searching, crying out in their hearts for answers. The light grew brighter as Jesus revealed his plan, how he was preparing to break through these deceptions on a massive scale. I saw future scenes of Muslims receiving dreams and visions, finding forbidden Bibles, encountering true Christians who could explain the real gospel. Suddenly, the heavenly realm began to fade. Jesus' final words echoed in my consciousness. Tell them what you've seen. Many are ready to hear the truth. I felt a violent jolt, and my eyes snapped open to the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room. The beeping of medical monitors replaced the celestial sounds I'd been hearing. My chest hurt where they'd cracked my ribs for CPR, and my head throbbed from the pool accident. Diana was holding my hand, her eyes red from crying. You were gone for 15 minutes, she whispered. They almost gave up on you. Over the next few days in the hospital, as I recovered from my injuries, the memories of my experience remained crystal clear. Unlike normal dreams that fade with time, every detail stayed sharp and vivid in my mind. I wrote everything down as soon as I could hold a pen. The impact of what I'd seen changed me completely. I could no longer stay silent when I heard people claim that all religions lead to God. I knew better now. I'd seen the truth with my own eyes. Since my experience, I've dedicated my life to sharing what I learned. I've spoken with many Muslims, sharing my story with those who are willing to listen. Some reject it outright, but others, especially those who've had their own doubts, listen intently. Several have even confided in me about their own questions about Islam. The most surprising thing has been the dreams. Muslims from different parts of the world have contacted me, describing dreams they've had that parallel what I saw in my NDE. Many of them had these dreams before ever hearing my story. I'm not special. I was just an ordinary guy who had an extraordinary experience, but I understand now why I was shown these things. The truth needs to be told, even if it's uncomfortable. Too much is at stake to remain silent. As I sit here writing this, 5 years after my near-death experience, I can still feel the weight of Jesus' final command. People need to know the truth about Islam, not out of hate, but out of love for the millions of sincere people trapped in its deception. If this story impacted you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming videos featuring more incredible near-death experiences and revelations about the spiritual realm. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this truth.